document. You can also include with a question some funny photo which students can react to. And of course, before you start the lesson, you will need to follow what has been posted, monitoring their use of English, and of course, good behavior when posting comments. Now, if your LMS doesn't provide the option of having a forum or group discussions, of course, you can always use external tools such as Facebook groups or groups on instant messaging tools such as WhatsApp. Of course, such groups would need to be set as private, and you need to control who can join or access them. If you're working with children under 18, it's best, of course, to check your school's e-safety policy again before using any online digital tools. And of course, it's best if you can discuss such e-safety matters together with your learners as well to raise their awareness as well. But such tools make it easy to share both the pre-lesson document, like the vocabulary, for example, if you have no LMS, and also collect students' reactions and comments to them. And also these tools can encourage frequent communication in English, provided, of course, you set very clear rules and monitor them. For more ideas, you can find a lesson plan on our digital teacher platform dealing specifically with how to integrate the use of instant messaging tools in your language class. Right, so we've covered interaction before the lesson. Let's take a look at what happens or what can happen during the lesson. This is actually the time when most of the interaction will probably take place. So first of all, an overview of the typical interaction tools that you can use. The use of audio, video, like what I'm using right now, my microphone and my web camera, the chat box that you are using, and I could also be using to interact with you. Sharing my screen, which again you can see right now happening. And if available, if your platform has these functionalities, you could use a whiteboard or breakout rooms. Those are things that enhance your learning, your teaching and learning experience in the classroom. But in the next few slides, I'm going to review very quickly the main interaction tools. So these tools that I listed here. And afterwards, we're going to look at typical interaction patterns from the start to the end of the lesson. So in terms of audio and video, of course, you need to check, first of all, whether your internet connection can support both. But it's okay if not to use just audio. And you don't need to use them both or either of them throughout the lesson, so you can decide when to stop using one or both of them. Screen sharing. Screen sharing is very useful. Of course, if you want to show your documents, your slides, any collaborative documents that are being created with the students in real time, any video or images, simply your browser window, and anything else that you would like to show your students. I mentioned the virtual whiteboard. It's a very useful functionality that is an equivalent of your normal board. Plus, the advantages online are that you can paste in, so copy from somewhere else in other documents and paste in, and then annotate images and activities, so you can write over a specific worksheet. You can write or draw or highlight or erase, and then at the end save that work if you think that might be useful for future reference. I'll show you some examples as we move on. Finally, the group chat. Of course, it's what you can see happening right now. You can use the chat to elicit from students answers. You can ask them, so you can have a conversation with your learners, but you can also encourage students to initiate and comment on each other's responses. And you can also use the chat to maybe elicit errors in order to make corrections and so on. This is probably the simplest way of interacting with your learners during the lesson. And it's also the tool that you might use at the beginning of the lesson to highlight or to signal if there are technical difficulties or issues. And finally, breakout rooms can be used to, of course, as you can imagine, to design interaction in small groups or pairs, typically to do speaking activities and any practice activities, or you may put the students in breakout rooms in order to share or to pool ideas before they join the large class again and share their ideas with the whole group. And we'd like to ask you, we're going to start one more poll. At this point, we'd like to know which of these functionalities would you like to be able to use more often in your teaching? Which of these 4 looks to you most useful and you'd like to use it more? So I can see screen sharing and breakout rooms seem to be the winners. Excellent, very interesting, yes. Not many of you are convinced of the chat, but the chat is what, as I said, what you can use when anything else fails or not much else is available. So let's not disregard it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and now let's look at some typical types of interaction during the lesson. First of all, as you probably noticed at the beginning of our webinar, the start of a lesson, the start of an online meeting usually is about meeting and greeting in the main room and checking the technical aspects. But even you could make this maybe these first 2, 3, 4 minutes a bit more personal, more enjoyable. For instance, making small talk, having a cup of tea, and maybe do a short warm-up exercise which need not be related to the lesson, just to help everyone focus on their screens. Because if you think in the analog teaching in our real classrooms, in our normal lives, school and home were different settings where we are capable of focusing on our different roles as a private person within our family, or at school as a learner, as a student, or us as a teacher. So in this situation now, it's becoming more difficult to split these settings, to be sitting at home together with maybe other family members, but still behave as a learner. So why not try to involve them in short physical exercises? For example, get up and spin clockwise 3 times and then switch direction another 3 times. Or ask them what they had for breakfast or for lunch. Ask them to show in the camera what personal object they have next to themselves and say a few words about it. I'm sorry, I normally have a teddy bear here with me. I could have shown it to you and say, well, this is my friend, and so on. So anything that helps you really break the ice. And of course, it's very important to have all the materials you're going to use in the lesson open in the browser bar at the bottom of your screen, so you can quickly share them on your screen at the right moment. Of course, another type of interaction is setting rules. You may want to set the main rules for interacting, as I said earlier, at least at this point, or at least the general rules. And you can always decide to let the students use their microphones or cameras for a specific activity later on during the lesson. Of course, the safest conditions are for students to be able to interact with you or with the whole group via chat only, at least at the beginning, to prevent unwanted interaction during your lesson. And this is all the more important in an online setting than in the real classroom. One thing that you may need to do in your lesson is to go back to the pre-lesson resources and check what students think and invite their comments and queries. And if they posted such feedback before the lesson, go through the posts and discuss them. You can use for this both audio and video at this stage. And if the group is small, you can also decide to let them interact with you live using their microphones or maybe even their cameras. Or you can simply use the chat. And if you want to record ideas to be saved, you can use the whiteboard function. But it's important at the beginning of the lesson to acknowledge all students' contributions and focus on what they've written and not necessarily the accuracy, because the aim here would be obviously to engage and encourage interaction, not to monitor the accuracy of their language very strictly. One other option at this stage of the lesson would be to elicit ideas using an external polling tool such as Mentimeter. I like Mentimeter because it allows you to generate a word cloud based on the responses. And you can use the word cloud, or you can save it and use it for further discussion later on. The central interaction probably takes place around the practice task or tasks that represent the main goal of the lesson. You typically need to share your screen to show it and to say or read out the instructions that are printed on the task. And here you might expect students to respond by contributing ideas on the whiteboard, for example, making sentences using the focus language elements, or to discuss together in small groups or in pairs in breakout rooms. And if such breakout rooms are not available, you will simply use the chat. If appropriate, you may ask students to respond by sharing their work through their camera. For example, showing an illustration or a sentence, or even ask them to share their screens if they have to present some conclusions that they have come to. Of course, if you are confident that they will use this option properly, you can give them such permission at this stage of the lesson only. For example, if you remember the writing task I showed before related to what makes us laugh, this might be a worksheet to share on your screen and ask them to practice expanding on their initial answers provided before the lesson by using linking words such as but or for example. This is a material you could show on the screen, including the prompt for a speaking activity, and your students could practice in a breakout room and still be able to see this worksheet. You can let the system pair up the students automatically, or you can put students in pairs as you prefer. If you don't have a whiteboard, you can create in advance a Google document and share it with the students before starting the activity. You can share the Google Doc then from your screen while students open a second browser window, access the Google document, enter their contributions, and then get back to the meeting room. If your Google document is shared from your screen, everyone will be able to see the contributions being added in real time as soon as they get back to the meeting room. Of course, part of every activity task or practice task it's very important to monitor and give feedback, and this is another type of interaction. Um, as you would do in the regular classroom, you need to monitor students' answers and provide feedback, either encouraging their ideas or highlighting errors if they are significant to your lesson aims. And there are several ways of monitoring and giving feedback. For example, giving individual feedback in the chat by selecting specifically the user that you would like to send that chat message to. Or in a group, if you are entering a group in a breakout room, you can listen in and then say a few words as feedback to that pair or small group. Or of course, you can give feedback to the whole group in the main meeting room orally, or again typed in the group chat. So this is an example of what you could do at the end of one activity where you have collected errors. In this case, maybe there were errors regarding prepositions. After they finish talking in their breakout rooms, you bring them all back to the main room and you address this language problem by, for example, opening the whiteboard and asking the question, where do you find or see or watch, for example, memes? And students might say the answer or using their microphone, or might write their answers on the board. And you would need to be careful and highlight the right preposition. So you would go, okay, on social media, and where do you watch comedies on TV and on YouTube, and so on. So you could collect all these corrections on your whiteboard, which then this collection could be, as I said, copied and saved for future reference. After concluding a first activity, you may still have time for a second one. For example, you could show the students a sample article and elicit comments from them. Is this a good article in response to the task? Why? It's probably easiest to use the chat function for this activity, but you may also decide to unmute the students in order to answer and discuss the text more freely. But it's important, if you're doing a second activity, to choose a different interaction pattern this time. So if your first activity puts students in groups or pairs, do this one as a whole group, and of course the other way around. You could also ask them what they think would make a good article in response to this task. And in this way, you would be preparing them for the writing they are going to do after the lesson. Ask the question and they can use the chat. Better still, they can type their ideas on the whiteboard, and these ideas then can be saved for later reference. And if no whiteboard is available, again, you can collect their ideas on the Google Doc that you have used instead. Alternatively, again, you can start a poll like Mentimeter and save their answers as a word cloud. And finally, you will need to conclude. Just as in the real classroom, you will need to provide a conclusion to review what was learned, what was improved. You will need to announce the follow-up task, to specify how the students will get it by email or upload it to a specific location, and what the deadline is for submitting it back. And you can decide to give rewards, like showing a 5-star sign in the camera for a specific group or learner who performed particularly well. You might decide to unmute the students and you all clap your hands or cheer or sing something. And what comes after the lesson is, in terms of interaction patterns, similar to what was before the lesson, of course. You could circulate the follow-up task in the same way as the pre-lesson resources, emailed or posted, uploaded. Students might do individual or collaborative work on a Google document or a Padlet. This work could be text-based, simply, for example, practicing simple past tense, or you might ask them to create something new, such as a text or a simple audio-video project, which they might hand in to you or might post on the LMS or on a school blog. Okay. Of course, this is the follow-up tasks that they will need to do. But remember, before the lesson, we also designed a discussion just to make sure that they go through the input material. In the same way, you would want to include interaction after the lesson as well. So you might decide to have them leave feedback on what colleagues have posted. You can also, of course, at the end, pass on your own feedback, either individually or in the same forum where it would be visible to the whole group. Now, I said that I would say that I would refer to feedback to writing a bit more extensively, because this is one of the most frequent activities that we tend to do pen and paper. Here are some tips. Hopefully they will help you save time and at the same time design feedback in a more collaborative way. You could include in your feedback just general comments on criteria such as organization or linking or the use of tenses. And you might use color coding to highlight different types of errors or problems. You might want to insert comments in the Word document that the students have submitted. And that feedback you might decide to be written or audio, as I mentioned at the beginning. But you can see a link where, again, to the digital teacher platform where we provide specific training on how to provide feedback to writing. I'm just going to show you a few examples. So this is an example of a way to give feedback, mentioning positive aspects and giving them some ideas for students to write a better version. Another option is to insert, as I said, comments directly in the text, and you may highlight some language errors in a color-coded way. Also, if you like, you can record yourself and embed the audio file in the document. If you see at the bottom of my slide on the left-hand side, there is an object embedded there. Anyway, if there are several people who have inserted comments in the document who have provided feedback, you can see that it's very easy, very clear to see who inserted which comment. And this is the way, this is how you can find these functionalities in Microsoft Word. You need to open the review menu and click on new comment. And if you want to follow the corrections and the various steps in the adjustments in the text, you need to track changes. If you want to embed your audio feedback, you can click on Insert Object. It's a very tiny icon that is hidden there. But of course, you can simply record your voice without embedding it in the document and just email it to your students. Now, other types of giving oral feedback might be by recording your screen using a screencasting tool. And this is particularly suitable if your students are in the upper secondary or above. And it feels as if you were explaining to the students directly what they need to improve about their text, as if you were sitting together with the student and having a short feedback session personally. Other types of feedback might simply include using a tool to capture parts of your screen and making annotations on it, and then saving that and email it to your student. This will contain your feedback in a visual way. Again, tips on how to use this tool, if you check the training provided on the digital teacher platform. Okay, so I said that hopefully it can also become a bit more collaborative. We can encourage peer feedback even better by using online or digital tools. I'd like to know if you do use peer feedback at all, if you ask your students to correct each other's homework and provide comments and observations. Do you ask students to read each other's texts and and make comments for improvement and give feedback. Okay. Yes, some of you do. Some others don't feel very comfortable doing that. Yes. Okay. Well, I thought of just two ways that you could organize it. One way would be to combine your holistic observations. For example, you provided comments on organization or register at text level, and then you ask the peers, the colleagues, to find specific examples of such problems in the text, whether it's use of tenses or linking devices. And in this way, you provide guidance to the students performing the evaluation. But of course, it needs to be reinforced here that they need to be willing to provide constructive feedback to their colleagues. And finally, you might have two students correct each other's work, but then you correct only one text. But you could still see from the feedback provided by the other student how aware they are of writing skills and language. Some general points to conclude is that you need to be prepared to allow more time for activities in an online lesson, like the activity setup and the checks of technology, the collection of the answers. All these will take more time. And it's probably a good idea to go for shorter sessions for 30 or 40 minutes with smaller groups. Also, it's because of that better to plan fewer activities and fewer steps, more targeted, and maybe have students do more term-based project work, so along a whole term, because they will find it easier to get together and collaborate, for example, to create a poster or a school magazine or a school blog. Just to show you the digital teacher platform that I kept mentioning, this is a place where you can find training, where you can find short videos telling you how to use specific tools, how to give feedback to writing or to speaking, and also gives reviews of very useful digital tools, so you can understand before you use a tool or before you choose it, you can understand its benefits and how you could use it in your class. And finally, on our website on Supporting Every Teacher, you find a wealth of other resources. I'm going to show you a few of them. First of all, the free teaching resources where you can find lesson plans with online guidance, or with guidance in case you need to run these lessons online. Another important element there is the Supporting Every Teacher blog from Cambridge University Press, which is providing a huge amount of posts and reviews of how things can be done now, can be transferred now to virtual learning. And also you can watch our free webinars. We have provided already a high number of webinars in the past few weeks, focusing on online teaching. And of course, there you can also see our upcoming webinars, which, by the way, we'll be looking at in more detail at teaching skills online. So reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Okay, I'm going to skip this. I don't know if we have time to... Do we have time? Are there any questions that we need to address at this point?
Hi, Simona.
Hi, Dania.
Thank you very much for that. I think you've addressed most of the questions. There's one or two that I've picked out that perhaps you could just touch on quickly. So one teacher has said, I've noticed that my students get really tired during these online lessons. What can we do to help that and keep them motivated?
That's right. So one aspect is clearly to try to design these sessions shorter by distributing as I said, the activities more evenly before, during, and after the lesson, and also during the session itself, you can, if you notice that the students are getting tired, you can include again very short activities, like standing up, doing something else, or doing something fun and very short that helps them refocus then and become again more active and more motivated.
And another question is, if breakout rooms are used, is it possible for teachers to go in and monitor what students are doing?
Exactly, absolutely. We wouldn't be recommending breakout rooms if that wasn't possible, because the purpose of having students work in groups is having them do meaningful communication with a peer, while also we have the possibility of monitoring and giving feedback. So definitely, yes, you can go from breakout room to breakout room and then get back to the main meeting room again to conclude the activity.
And one final question. You talked about
it depends how you look at it and also how you present it to your students. If you explain that certain activities during the class were actually more demanding because they had to focus on a long presentation or to read a long text, and now the alternative is to do it in their own time and taking their time to read that text maybe 3 times before the lesson, maybe then they will perceive the advantages of doing that. In any case, not flooding or not bombarding the learners with the resources, expecting them to just go through the resources, but making it clear that they are part of a flow of activities and they will be meaningful for the online meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you too. I wish everyone a lot of success and fun teaching online, and hope to see you again attending our webinars coming up in the next few weeks. Thank you very much. Goodbye.